And welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, having a conversation with Peter Deeb. He is the chairman of Hampton Securities Limited. Peter, right at the end of that segment, you talked about the pressure this puts on the Canadian dollar. Can you elaborate a little bit how debt levels translate into a lower Canadian dollar?
Well, sure. I mean, as the debt pile increases at the federal level, the stability of the currency is called into question by foreign investors, by our trade partners, people that want to sell into the Canadian market have to look at the risk they want to take in getting paid in Canadian dollars. That'll put pressure on the dollar downwards against foreign currencies and make imports more expensive. It'll become very inflationary. It'll be inflation at a level that most Canadians of the current generation, say under 40, never even read about. So we need to be really careful. This is not trying to be alarmist, but the math speaks for itself. Over the next 10 years, we're going to double the national and national provincial debt, and the interest number you're going to be talking about will look like what our total budget was 15 years ago.
Yeah, and already, as I said, the federal debt level servicing costs exceed health transfers to provinces to help sustain the healthcare system, just as an example. So let's compare and contrast a little bit. What can you tell us about U.S. sovereign debt?
So the U.S. has a significant advantage in that, unlike what I said earlier about sovereign wealth funds in Canada, every sovereign wealth fund around the world has a U.S. dollar, call it appetite. So the U.S. dollar issued debt has a wide marketplace, and out of all the crummy debt that's out there, the U.S. dollar is the least scary from a sovereign perspective. So they have that advantage of being sort of the best house in a crummy neighborhood. So I think they're certainly headed in the wrong direction. Chairman Powell, the Federal Reserve, said their current strategy is unsustainable. So they're headed for trouble. It may be longer than everybody else down the road before it happens, but that doesn't justify that we're going in the wrong direction. There's no justification for it.
And I think related to that, of course, is the U.S. dollar is still seen as a reserve currency. So that helps support its debt levels. But is that changing at all?
Well, Tony, you're the reserve currency until somebody finds something better. And right now, as I said, most other currencies don't compare favorably to the U.S. dollar. There's a lot of, direct and tertiary reasons why there's strength associated with the U.S. dollar. So I don't think that's really in jeopardy. I think some of the things that the BRICS group are doing might challenge dollar's dominance and take it from 85% of global trade being dollar denominated down to 75. Is it going to zero? Not anytime soon.
Right.
But the caution is warranted.
Yeah, and so just maybe bring our audience a bit more up to date. When you say BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now there's a Saudi Arabia's involved and other countries too. So what are their plans when it comes to currency transactions?
Well, I mean, part of the catalyst for them all converging under the BRICS banner was to look at their own independent strategy for the next 20, 30, 40 years and what to do if they decide not to tie themselves to the dollar. Is there an alternative to it? And they're looking at their massive resources, their massive financial reserves, and they're asking the question, why can't we create a currency of our own that we can trade with that, it doesn't require the dollar? Certainly there's been no shortage of commentary around sanctions that were placed on Russia and the potential of seizing Russian treasury assets that are around the world. Well, that scared everybody, that if the Americans got mad at you, they could seize your treasury bills. So you're seeing a lot of countries cashing out their treasuries and looking for alternatives. So these are unprecedented times, Tony, and people are looking for unprecedented solutions in these different marketplaces. And we need to be aware of that, not just assume everything will be business as usual.
I'd like to discuss the seizing of assets issue, because there is a lot of talk about seizing Russian assets to pay for Ukrainian reconstruction. But there's a flip side to that in terms of risk, right?
There's a big flip side to that. There are a lot of countries out there that have periods of time where they're hostile to the U.S., to the EU, excuse me, to different degrees. if the message you're sending them now is, if we get into a disagreement with you, we can freeze your assets, which are predominantly held in U.S. dollars and U.S. Treasury, and we can confiscate them and use them for something else. I mean, they couldn't send a more terrifying message to developing countries such as China, India, Pakistan, the African continent. Why
Right.
on earth would they buy U.S. Treasuries if every time they have a disagreement, they run the risk of being sanctioned?